began to return. Not all. Not right away. One day, a man, presumed missing, opened the door to his house. He looked the same. He spoke with the same voice. He called the same names. And that was what frightened him most. Because the first thing his loved ones noticed was that he no longer looked in mirrors. He carefully walked around them. Et tourne Hawaii. He covered reflective surfaces as if afraid of being caught. And sometimes it seemed as if he was listening to something inside himself before answering. The discrepancies were minor, too minor to immediately raise alarm. He confused his favorite mug. He mispronounced old jokes. He knew the facts, but he couldn't remember the feelings associated with them. And when they asked him, "Are you okay?" he always answered the same way. "Yes, I am me, too." Ebonly, too confidently, the way those who've memorized the phrase speak. Some started recording themselves. Cameras, audio, old voice recorders. They wanted to prove they were still real, but the recordings behaved strangely. Sometimes the voice on the tape responded before the person began speaking. Sometimes it added words that no one else had spoken. And on one recording, the person fell silent in the middle of a sentence. And in the silence, someone whispered, "You're already inside." An idea for a test emerged. Simply cruel. A person was placed in front of a mirror and asked not to move the reflection. Mobet feared. They never returned home. Some couldn't bear it and closed their eyes. And it was at that moment the reflection began to approach the glass. The most terrifying thing wasn't immediately realized. The real people began to avoid any reflection, and those who returned, it was the opposite. They were drawn to the glass, to the display cases, to the windows at night, as if checking to see how many of them there were. And one day, someone said out loud, "What if the real ones are us now?" At the end of the recording, which was found later, there was one frame, a room without mirrors. A man stands in the middle and stilly looks at himself, because the reflects on no longer needed the glass. When the disappearances began to repeat, people began to make lists. Unofficial, Acha, and Divide. They contained the names of those who had disappeared. And Tosi, who had returned, but soon they noticed a strange detail. So Minamaze appeared on the lists twice, once among the living, the second time among those who had never appeared. People tried to compare notes, but every time they looked at the paper for too long, they began to feel like their names were swapped. The children were the first to notice the difference. They always stared longer. They didn't look away. One boy told his mother that his dad wasn't looking right. Another child refused to approach his sister because, in his words, she was stuck in the glass. The children were taught not to look in mirrors, but sometimes, in the middle of the night, they would wake up and whisper into the darkness. He's standing here. He's waiting for me to fall asleep. Everyone's dreams changed. People dreamed of rooms that didn't exist. Frameless mirrors, endless reflections. And each time, Deir said, "A dream isn't a dream. It's a place where reflections can come closer." One person woke up with the feeling that someone had just returned to their place, and he himself was left somewhere else. Those who returned became better. They learned to laugh at the right time. They learned to pause. They learned to recall emotions. But sometimes, they made mistakes in the middle of a sentence. Or they stared too long at reflective surfaces. At such moments, it seemed like someone was checking the settings. And one day, they stopped making mistakes. The last signal was the most terrifying. In one city, the power went out for several minutes. When the power came back, people noticed. Tamiriz no longer showed anything. They turned black, smart, empty. Because those who were inside had already come out. They don't come out of mirrors. They come